Another cutting tool that we want to talk about are T-slot cutters. Now, T-slot cutters and woodruff cutters are similar to one another, but they have some very important differences, and we're going to talk about that for a few minutes. So this is a T-slot cutter here. Now, it's designed to do exactly what its name says, cut T's, right? To cut a T-slot in material. So this is essentially what we do with a T-slot cutter. And if you look closely here, in this example, on the right-hand side, we have a T-slot cutter that is just like a straight tooth, right? Notice how it's a straight tooth, straight across. In this example here, you'll notice that the straight tooth is this direction right here, right? Whether it tilts forward, like in this example, or perhaps we get one that has a positive rake in this example. So here's your negative rake here. This tooth, this indexable insert is up high, where this insert is down low. So even though this is also a straight tooth across the top, we could call this a staggered tooth, and there's a little bit of maybe confusion sometimes as to what we actually call the tools and the design. Typically a staggered tooth, you're going to have one tooth up, one tooth down, like here, right? One up, one down. Sometimes we hear staggered tooth tools referred to as ones where you'll see one tooth, it'll kind of, this line here, it won't be vertical. It'll be on an angle, right? The front facing part of the cutting tooth will be on an angle, and then this one will be on the opposite angle, right? So for the purposes of this video here, we're going to refer to these two styles, this as a straight tooth T-slot cutter, and this as a staggered tooth, because we have one up and one down. And there's an advantage to this too, because in indexable T-slot cutters, you can buy inserts in some cases that will have a range, right? So we can get cutters that are a little bit wider, a little bit taller, and a little bit deeper perhaps, whereas these are just solid one tool cutters. So the T-slot cutter, it's designed to cut on its periphery. Okay, so here's another example of a staggered tooth, right? See how one tooth goes forward and one tooth is backward and one is forward. So there's another, so this one's one up, one down. So we would call this a staggered tooth as well. But they're designed to cut on the periphery, right? That's the outside diameter of the cutting edges of the cutting tool. But it's also able to cut on its side, right? So we might think of this as the bottom of the cutting tool, but this is the side of the cutting tool, okay? Right here. So T-slot cutters, they're designed to cut on the periphery and on their side. So this allows the T-slot cutter to cut side to side, right? So if we're down inside this part, and we need to make an adjustment, we need to put a little bit of clearance on that slot, we can adjust that cutting tool to the left or to the right, but we can also plunge. And so that's the advantage of having cutting capabilities on the side of the T-slot cutter here. And we notice that even here, right? The T-slot cutter, it does require a clearance slot. So where we have these two green lines here, this slot has to be cut first, because obviously there's no cutting action on the shank, right? We don't take this tool and plunge down into the part. We approach it from the side. That's how we get this shape. So this has to be cut out first to allow the shank to move through. And then we create this lower feature with the T-slot cutter. So once the clearance slot has been created and the T-slot cutter is in position, then we make the cut. And movements in Z, X, and Y can be made to increase the depth or the width of that slot.